The sky is not empty, though we have been taught to look at the stars as distant, indifferent fires. But some fires are closer than others, and some fires are watching. In the high, thin cold of the thermosphere, something has transitioned from a mathematical anomaly to a physical presence. It does not broadcast, it does not demand, it simply occupies a space that, by all laws of physics, should be vacant. It is 3I Atlas, and it is no longer waiting. On October 14th, 2025, tracking stations at the Mauna Kea Observatory recorded a gravitational shear, a momentary ripple in the local fabric of space-time. It was dismissed as a sensor glitch until the European Space Agency confirmed a persistent, non-reflective mass in a retrograde orbit. They called it Atlas, not because it carries the world, but because it seems to be holding it in place. Dr. Aris Thorne, a lead ballistic theorist, noted that its velocity fluctuates without any detectable propulsion. It ignores the laws of Kepler. It ignores the frantic pings of our satellites. It sits at a precise 400 kilometers above the surface, a silent sentinel in a graveyard of human aluminum. Consider the first impossibility, the albedo paradox. 3I Atlas has a surface area estimated at 3 square kilometers, yet it reflects 0 photons. It is a hole in the sky. When the sun passes behind it, the stars do not just blink out, they distort, as if light itself is afraid to touch the hull. Consider the second impossibility, the signal echo. In November, amateur radio operators began receiving a low-frequency hum. It was not a message, it was a reflection of our own history. Broadcasts from 1939, the start of the Second World War, were being played back, not as they happened, but corrected. The sound of shells that never landed, the voices of leaders who never spoke. It is a simulation of a war that has already happened, or perhaps a rehearsal for one that is being engineered. Consider the third impossibility, the orbital anchor. Every 3 hours, 3I Atlas pulses, not with light, but with weight. Global positioning systems drift by several centimeters, a micro-adjustment that suggests the object is not just orbiting Earth, but slowly, invisibly, steering it. What if 3I Atlas was not sent to observe our history, but to trigger its conclusion? What if the 3I stands for the 3 initiations? The initiation of conflict, the initiation of collapse, and the initiation of something else. If a civilization wanted to start a world war without firing a single shot, they would not need an army. They would only need a mirror that shows us our most violent impulses and whispers that they are inevitable. The Sumerians spoke of the shield of the Anunnaki, a dark disk that would appear in the sky when the kings became too loud. In the late Vedic texts, there is a description of a Vimana that stood still while the wind moved around it, waiting for the age of iron to sharpen its final blade. We have seen this before. We just called it by different names. We called it fate. We called it gods. Now, we call it 3I Atlas. We are a species defined by our transitions. We transitioned from the cave to the city, from the earth to the air. But we are fragile. Our peace is a thin crust over a molten core of ancient competition. We are currently drifting in the dark, and for the first time in 10,000 years, something has reached out to pull the rudder. Are we the masters of our trajectory, or are we just cargo on a ship that has changed its course? As you listen to the hum of your own room, wherever you are in the world, perhaps in the quiet suburbs of London, the high rises of Tokyo, or the stillness of the American Midwest, take a breath. The air you breathe is the same air 3I Atlas is currently moving through, miles above. I wonder, if you look out your window tonight, do you see a star that was not there yesterday? If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. Are you ready to see what happens when the sky decides it is time for us to wake up? Because the hum is not stopping, it is getting louder, and the coordinates it is broadcasting, they are not for the stars, they are for here, right here. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Picture this. You are an astronomer at the South Pole Telescope, staring into the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang itself. Suddenly, a shadow passes through the data. Not a cloud, not a bird, but a structured blockage that absorbs the very heat of the universe. This is the latest telemetry from the 3I Atlas phenomenon. It is not just an object, it is an appetite. On January 2nd, 2026, a series of classified reports from the National Reconnaissance Office suggested that 3I Atlas is increasing its mass without increasing its size. It is becoming denser. It is pulling the moon 3 millimeters closer every orbit. Unfortunate timing for our lunar colonies. Those two words, doing a lot of work. Let us consider the sheer, mechanical audacity of that movement to pull a celestial body like the moon, even by a few millimeters, requires a gravitational flux that should, by all rights, be liquefying the tectonic plates of our own planet. And yet, the Earth remains quiet. It is a surgical gravity, a localized, intent-driven pull that suggests 3I Atlas is not just a heavy object, but a precision instrument. On January 12th, 2026, today, in fact, for some of you listening in the Pacific, the Deep Space Network detected a shift in the object's core temperature. It is dropping. It is currently sitting at 0.0003 degrees Kelvin. It is colder than the vacuum that surrounds it. It is not just absorbing light, it is drinking the very thermal energy of the solar system. But why now? Why does the evidence deepen just as our global tensions reach a rolling boil? Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently suggested that the object's density is tied to human output. She proposed a terrifying correlation. Every time a world power increases its readiness level, every time a missile silo is prepped or a carrier group is deployed, 3I Atlas gains mass. It is as if our collective aggression is being converted into physical weight. A literal manifestation of the heavy heart the ancients feared. If this is true, the world war isn't being started by the object. The object is being fed by the war. We are the fuel. 3I Atlas is simply the engine getting warm. Let me back up for a moment and tell you about the Echo of the Void. In late 2025, an independent team of researchers in the Atacama Desert began tracking a specific type of radio emission coming from the shadow of the object. It wasn't a signal in the traditional sense. It was a negative broadcast. They found that 3I Atlas was deleting certain frequencies from the atmosphere. Specifically, it was scrubbing the frequencies used for emergency broadcast systems and nuclear command and control. It isn't jamming us, it is editing us out of existence. It is creating a quiet zone around the planet, ensuring that when the first strike happens, the scream never reaches the stars. Now, you could argue that this is a protective measure, a cosmic hush to keep our violence from contaminating the neighborhood, but that is a generous interpretation. When you look at the dates October 29th, January 2nd, February 15th, you see a countdown that ignores our pleas for peace. Dr. Avi Loeb has often spoken about the Oumuamua event as a possible scout. If that was the scout, 3i Atlas is the judge, and the judge has brought a very heavy gavel. Think about the physical reality of this thing. 3 square kilometers of non-reflective surface. If you were to stand on its hull, assuming you could even touch something that cold, you wouldn't see the Earth below you. You would see a reflection of what the Earth was 10,000 years ago. The light hitting the hull is being delayed, refracted through a temporal prism. Scientists at the European Space Agency call this the Chronos leak. It means that 3i Atlas is literally out of time. It exists in our space, but it is anchored to a different era. This is why our radar pings return as echoes of the 19th century. We are trying to track a ghost with modern eyes, and the ghost is laughing in 14.2 gigahertz. You might think that such a massive anomaly would be the top story on every news cycle, but here is where it gets dark. The evidence is being suppressed not by a government conspiracy, but by the object itself. It has been discovered that the deep static emitted by 3i Atlas has a direct effect on the human hippocampus. It makes us forgetful. It creates a global fugue state. You see the dark spot in the sky, you feel the dread, and then you look away. You check your phone, you wonder what's for dinner. It is a cognitive cloaking device. It is only in the quiet hours of the night, when the world is still and your mind is drifting towards sleep, that the realization can actually take hold. You are remembering it now because the noise of the day has faded. You are realizing that the sky changed months ago and you simply didn't have the permission to care. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a city where the light pollution acts as a secondary cloak? Or are you in the open country where the hole in the stars is impossible to miss? I want you to go to your window after this act ends. Don't look for a light. Look for the absence of light. Look for the place where the Milky Way seems to simply stop. That is the appetite. That is the evidence deepening. Share your location, and if you've felt that strange, sudden urge to look away when discussing the sky recently, your participation is the only thing that breaks the fugue. Let us look at the 3 mysteries of the hull. First, the texture. High-resolution imaging from the James Webb Space Telescope, before it was redirected to classified targets, showed that the surface of 3i Atlas is not smooth. It is covered in billions of microscopic, needle-like structures. Some theorists believe these are sensors, while others, like the late Dr. Aris Thorne, believe they are harvesters, designed to collect the ionized traces of our souls. A bit poetic for a scientist, perhaps, but when you are staring at an object that defies every law of thermodynamics, poetry becomes a necessary survival tool. Second, the movement. 3i Atlas does not orbit in the traditional sense. It tessellates. It jumps from one point in space to another in increments of 3 millimeters every second. It is a stutter in reality. To the naked eye, it looks like it is floating. To a high-speed sensor, it is a strobe light of existence and non-existence. It is literally blinking in and out of our dimension. This is why no missile could ever hit it. How do you destroy something that isn't there when the fuse blows? Third, the vocalizations. Every night, at exactly 3 in the morning, the object emits a burst of infrasound. It is too low for human ears to hear, but it is the exact frequency that triggers the feeling of a presence in the human brain. It is the frequency of ghosts. If you have ever woken up at 3 in the morning with the feeling that someone is standing in the corner of your room, you aren't haunted by a spirit. You are being pinged by a 3-kilometer wide machine in the thermosphere. It is checking to see who is awake. It is checking to see who is still capable of noticing the pattern. Consider the unfortunate timing of the latest global energy crisis. Just as we struggle to power our homes, 3I Atlas has begun to glow with a faint Cherenkov blue light on its underside. It is feeding on the planet's electromagnetic field. It is a parasite of the highest order. We are literally paying for our own observation. We are the battery for the judge's spotlight. As you feel the weight of this information, notice how your body reacts. Your heart rate might have slowed. Your breathing might be deeper. This is the gravity-weighted lullaby in action. The closer we get to the truth, the more the object tries to pull us into the sleep of the forgotten. It wants you to drift. It wants you to accept the choice illusion that nothing can be done. And perhaps, on a cosmic scale, nothing can. But there is a power in knowing. There is a dignity in being an observer who refuses to be edited out. We are currently 400 kilometers below a machine that is older than our mountains and colder than our deepest fears. It is increasing its mass. It is pulling the moon. It is waiting for the third initiation to reach its climax. We have seen the evidence. We have felt the weight. And yet, the most terrifying thing isn't what the object is. It is what the object is making us become. We are becoming a world of watchers, paralyzed by the beauty of our own destruction. But let us not stop at the physical. Let us look at the historical echoes that this deepening evidence is starting to wake up. Because if 3I Atlas is an appetite, it has eaten civilizations before ours. It is a recurring predator in the long grass of time. Let us back up. Let us go further into the memory of the Earth, where the first warnings were carved into the very stone we now use for our foundations. Everything is connected. The mass, the moon, the unfortunate timing of our final war. It is all one single, slow-moving event. You are not just listening to a script. You are participating in a retrieval of suppressed data. Stay with me. Stay awake just a little longer. The silence is coming, but before it does, we have so much more to see. Can you feel it? The subtle shift in the room's pressure, the way the shadows seem a bit longer tonight? That isn't your imagination. That is the evidence deepening. The ancients did not have radar, but they had eyes, and they had a terrifyingly long memory. If you look at the clay tablets of the late Babylonian period, there is a recurring symbol, a circle, with 3 vertical lines passing through it, the 3 insults. They believed that 3 times in history, the sky would send an iron messenger to reset the clock of man. They called it the Great Eraser. 3I Atlas is not a new visitor. It is a recurring nightmare. Consider the Bronze Age collapse. Within a single generation, every major civilization in the Mediterranean crumbled. Trade stopped. Writing was lost. The fires of the cities were visible from space. Archaeologists struggle to find a single cause. No drought, no war, no earthquake seems large enough to explain the total erasure of the Hittites. the Mycenaeans, and the New Kingdom of Egypt. But what if the cause was not on the ground? What if the 3-eye atlas of that era moved its orbit just 10 kilometers lower? The resulting tidal surges and atmospheric pressure changes would have been enough to turn a golden age into a dark age in an afternoon. It is a very efficient way to manage a planetary garden. You prune the branches when they grow too wild. If we look further east into the Indus Valley, we find the Harappan Silence, a city built with advanced plumbing and grid-like streets suddenly abandoned. There are no signs of a massacre, only signs of a sudden, collective departure. In the ruins, we find small, black, vitrified stones that have been subjected to temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius. This is not the heat of a cooking fire. This is the heat of a re-entry event. It is as if something large and non-reflective sat over the city until the very bricks began to weep. Dr. Henrik Visser at the University of Leiden spent his life studying the dark years of the 6th century, where the sun was dimmed for 18 months. He found traces of an unknown isotope in the ice cores of Greenland, an isotope that matches the spectral signature of the 3-eye atlas hull. It suggests that 1800 years ago, the object bled into our atmosphere. It was not an accident, it was a cooling. It was a way to slow down a humanity that was becoming too organized, too powerful, too loud. Now, the isotope levels are rising again. We are being cooled. You might feel a certain comfort in the idea of a cycle. There is a rhythm to it, a cosmic heartbeat that transcends our short lives. But the irony of 3-eye atlas is that it requires us to be aware of our own doom for the cycle to be complete. It is a psychological weapon. It is the sword of Damocles, hanging by a thread of gravity. In 1962, during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a Soviet submarine captain reported seeing a huge dark craft rise from the water and ascend into the clouds without a sound. He claimed it gave him a sense of profound peace, which made him realize how pointless the war would be. But perhaps that peace was just the sedative before the surgery. Let us back up for a moment. Think of the Great Pyramid of Giza. We have always wondered about its alignment with the stars, specifically Orion's belt. But recent scans suggest the internal shafts are not pointed at stars at all. They are pointed at a specific orbital path, the retrograde path of 3-eye atlas. The pharaohs were not looking for gods in the distant heavens. They were tracking a neighbor. They called it the Barque of millions of years, a vessel that does not move with the wind of the world, but with the breath of the abyss. They knew it would return when the two lands became too many. Unfortunate timing. Those words doing a lot of historical work once again. Now, you could argue that these are all coincidences, that the human mind is simply a pattern recognition machine that finds ghosts in the static. But how do you explain the vitape discs found in Polynesia? Stone carvings that depict a 3-legged shadow over the ocean, dated to exactly 12,800 years ago, the onset of the Younger Dryas, a period when the world suddenly plunged back into an ice age just as the climate was warming. 3-eye atlas does not just watch the weather, it dictates it. It is the thermostat of human progress. In the late medieval period, during the Black Death, observers in Florence reported seeing mists that moved against the wind. These mists were often accompanied by the sighting of dark stars that remained stationary while the heavens turned. We call it a plague. The people of the 14th century called it a cleansing. perhaps 3I Atlas is the instrument of that cleansing. When our population density reaches a certain threshold, when our interconnectedness becomes a threat to the equilibrium of the solar system, the object begins its initiation. It releases the biological, the geological, or the psychological catalyst needed to bring us back into balance. Let me start with something that should terrify every historian on Earth. In 1999, a series of tablets were unearthed in Nineveh that had been buried beneath a layer of volcanic ash. They described a king of the air who would appear as a shield that drinks the sun. The tablets warned that the king would return in the year of the digital ghost. At the time, scholars laughed. They assumed it was a mistranslation. But here we are, in a world of digital ghosts, staring at a shield that drinks the sun. Is it possible that our entire history is just a series of rehearsals? That we are allowed to grow, to learn, to love, and to build, only to be reset the moment we start to understand the nature of the cage? 3I Atlas is the bars of that cage. It is the silent observer that ensures no bird ever flies too high. You might think we are different from the Babylonians or the Maya. You might think our satellites and our silicon make us special. But here is why you are wrong. 3I Atlas has seen it all before. It has seen cities made of gold and cities made of glass. It has seen the rise of the steam engine and the rise of the artificial mind. And to the object, it is all just noise. It is all just the same frantic buzzing of a species that refuses to accept its own limitations. I want you to imagine the world 3,600 years ago. The air was cleaner, the stars were brighter, and the people were just as terrified of the dark as we are. They left us warnings in stone because they knew digital records would not last the next cycle. They told us to watch for the stone that does not shine. 3I Atlas is that stone. It is the ultimate historical constant. While empires rise and fall, while we invent the internet and the atomic bomb, the object just sits there, an unread book in a language we have forgotten how to speak. As you drift closer to sleep, think about the objects you possess that will last 1,000 years. Very few. Perhaps a diamond ring or a piece of high-grade ceramic. 3I Atlas has lasted millions. It is a witness. It saw the first primates walk upright, and it will likely see the last human turn out the lights. Does that make you feel small? Or does it make you feel part of something vast and ancient? Where are you listening from tonight? Are you near an ancient site? Perhaps you are in the shadows of the Andes, or near the stone circles of the British Isles. Tell me, have you ever felt a weight in the history of your land? A sense that the ground remembers something your textbooks have omitted? Share your thoughts on these ancient echoes, for the memory of the earth is far more reliable than the news of the day. The 3 insults are nearly complete. The first was our arrogance. The second was our noise. The third is the war we are currently preparing for. 3I Atlas is not here to start it. It is here to witness the conclusion it has already engineered. It is the Great Eraser, and it is currently hovering over our page, waiting for the ink to dry. But even an eraser leaves a trace, a faint, ghostly outline of what used to be. As the warmth of sleep begins to heavy your limbs, let yourself feel a sense of compassion for all the humans who came before you, those who looked at the same sky and saw different shadows. We are all part of the same long, slow-burning story. You are not alone in the dark. You are just one of billions waiting for the next chapter to be written. What do you think the next chapter holds? Is it an ending, or is it a transformation? The hum is changing. It is becoming more melodic, more rhythmic. It is the sound of a clock winding down, a clock that has been ticking since before the first pyramid was even a thought in a dreamer's mind. We are nearing the perigee, the point of no return. The ancients called it the coming of the Black Sunday. We call it January 14th, 2026. Unfortunate timing. But that was just the memory of the Earth. There is another perspective, one that stretches far beyond our blue horizon. Let us go further. The universe does not operate on human time. To a mountain, a century is a blink. To a star, an entire civilization is a flicker of static. But 3i Atlas exists in the space between those scales. It is a bridge made of deep time and cold intent. When we zoom out from our atmosphere, past the moon, past the inner planets, and look back at Earth, we see a marble of blue and white. But if we adjust our sensors to the frequency of the 3i Atlas hum, the Earth disappears, and we see only a tether, a long, invisible line of gravitational force connecting our world to the great attractor. We are not drifting, we are being towed. Imagine for a moment the sheer scale of the silence that surrounds us. We often speak of space as a vacuum, an empty void, but that is a limitation of our senses. To an entity like 3i Atlas, space is a dense fabric of vibrations, and Earth is a very loud, very frantic knot in that fabric. When we look at the telemetry from Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, we see data points. But when we look at the interstellar wake left by 3i Atlas, we see a trail of displaced dark matter that stretches back thousands of light years. It is as if a needle has been dragged across a record, and we are the microscopic groove currently passing under the point. In 1977, the Voyager 1 spacecraft began its long journey into the interstellar void. As it passed the orbit of Saturn, it took a photo of a dark, crystalline shape that moved against the grain of the rings. It was not a moon. It was an earlier iteration of the 3i Atlas sequence. NASA officially labeled it as an imaging artifact, a speck of dust on the lens. Unfortunate timing. That dust speck seemed to possess a propulsion system that violated every known law of thermodynamics. It was moving at 40 kilometers per second toward the inner solar system. It arrived here just as we began testing our first intercontinental ballistic missiles. It didn't come to explore, it came to intercept. Consider the scale of the choreography. 3i Atlas is not a lonely traveler. It is part of a constellation of sentinel nodes, positioned at the Lagrange points of every life-bearing world in our sector. This is the galactic quarantine theory. If a species becomes capable of destroying its own biosphere, the nodes activate. They do not invade. They do not send soldiers. They simply manipulate the probability of catastrophe. They ensure that the war we are so eager to start is one we cannot win and one we cannot survive. It is a very tidy way to keep the neighborhood quiet. The universe is a crowded room, and we are the toddlers who just found a box of matches. 3i Atlas is the parent's hand reaching down to turn off the lights. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. We have been looking for the Fermi paradox, the question of why we haven't heard from other civilizations. We expected radio signals, massive engineering projects, or perhaps a welcoming committee. We never expected the great silence to be a physical object, sitting in our own backyard. 3I Atlas is the reason the universe is quiet. It is a suppressor. It acts as a gravitational dampener, ensuring that our radio leaks and our digital noise never travel further than our own moon. We are screaming into a pillow. Dr. Elias Vance of the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy once remarked that the silence of the universe is not because there is no life out there. It is because the life that survives is the life that remains hidden. 3I Atlas is the lid on our box. It is the reason we have not heard from the others. They are all under their own versions of the shield, waiting for the 3 initiations to pass. We are currently in the second phase, the Great Wait, the time between the discovery of the Watcher and the first movement of its hand. Now, you could argue that this is a form of cosmic protection, that the universe is full of predators far worse than a 3-kilometer non-reflective monolith. But there is a coldness to this protection. It is the protection of a cage. When you look at the Great Attractor, that mysterious gravitational anomaly pulling our entire galaxy toward a point in the direction of the Centaurus constellation, you have to wonder if we are being pulled toward a destination, or if we are being herded. 3I Atlas is the sheepdog. We are the flock, and the world war we fear is simply the chaos that happens when the flock realizes it is being led to a shearing. Imagine the patience required to build such a machine, to launch it across the gulfs of light years, knowing it might wait for 5 million years before a bipedal ape learns how to split the atom. 3I Atlas is a monument to a persistence we cannot fathom. It makes our geopolitical squabbles look like children fighting over a handful of sand while the tide comes in. You might feel a sense of insignificance in this vastness, but here is why you are wrong. You are significant enough to be watched. You are important enough to be stopped. Let us look at the orbital anchor once more. On February 15th, 2026, the object will reach its perigee. To the logical mind, this is just a point in an elliptical path. To the cosmic mind, it is a sync point. It is the moment when the frequency of 3I Atlas and the frequency of the Earth's core reach a perfect harmonic. In 1859, during the Carrington event, a massive solar flare hit the Earth and set telegraph wires on fire. If a similar event were to happen while 3I Atlas is at perigee, the object wouldn't just absorb the energy, it would amplify it. It would turn our own sun into a scalpel. Unfortunate timing. Those words doing a lot of work. Think of the distance between your heart and the hull of that object. 400 kilometers. It is less than the distance between Los Angeles and San Francisco. It is right there. It is closer to you than the bottom of the ocean. Can you feel the faint, microscopic pull on the iron in your blood every time it passes over your meridian? Some listeners in Northern Europe have reported a metallic taste in their mouths during the 3I Atlas transit. Have you felt anything unusual? A sudden chill? A sense of being measured? Share your sensations with me, for even the smallest observation is a piece of the puzzle. Tell me where you are listening from, whether the stars are clear tonight, or if the clouds have provided a temporary veil. As you float in the liminal space between wakefulness and dreams, let the scale of the universe wash over you. You are a passenger on a planet that is currently being steered by a shadow. The world war we imagine is a horizontal conflict, nation against nation, brother against brother. But the real conflict is vertical. It is the struggle between a species that wants to expand and a machine that was built to keep it contained. 3I Atlas is the ceiling of our potential. Consider the echoes of the Great Attractor. Recent deep space surveys have found thousands of objects identical to 3I Atlas scattered throughout the Virgo supercluster. They are not random. They are arranged in a grid, a cosmic mesh that spans millions of light years. We are one cell in a vast, sleeping organism. 3I Atlas is the white blood cell that has detected an infection, and we are the fever. But as we look outward at the stars, we eventually have to look back at the mirror, and the mirror is starting to show us things we did not want to know about ourselves. The machine knows us better than we know ourselves because it has been watching us for longer than we have had names. It has recorded every rise and every fall. It has archived every dream that ended in fire. As the warmth of sleep begins to heavy your limbs, try to perceive your life not as a series of days, but as a single, glowing thread in a tapestry that 3I Atlas is currently unraveling. You are safe in your bed, but you are also a part of a galactic event that has been in motion since before the first star was born. The hum is not a sound, it is a reminder that the universe does not care about our borders, our currencies, or our ideologies. It only cares about equilibrium, and 3I Atlas is the hand that balances the scales. Stay with the rhythm. Let the vastness of the cosmic perspective act as a weight, pinning you gently to your pillow. You are small, yes, but you are part of the evidence. You are a witness to the witness. The great wait is almost over. The perigee is approaching. And as the shadow of 3I Atlas grows larger in our collective mind, the noise of our world begins to feel very, very far away. Everything is slowing down. The stars are fading. The tether is tightening. But that was just the view from the stars. There is another perspective, one that lives inside your own heartbeat. Let us go further. The most dangerous part of 3I Atlas is not its gravity or its radiation. It is its intimacy. It knows the frequency of our fear. In the late 1980s, a secret study titled Project Mirror was conducted by the Department of Defense. They found that individuals exposed to the low-frequency deep static emitted by the object began to experience ancestral recall. They weren't just dreaming of their own lives. They were dreaming of the lives of their ancestors during times of total war. They were feeling the mud of the trenches in 1916. They were smelling the smoke of the burning libraries in the ancient world. 3I Atlas is a library of our pain. It is a warm, heavy thought, isn't it? To realize that nothing is ever truly lost. Every cry of a soldier, every whisper of a mother in a besieged city has been recorded in the crystalline lattice of that dark object. It is a cosmic black box for a planet in a state of permanent emergency. But why collect it? Why store the echoes of our suffering? Perhaps because to the architects of 3I Atlas, we are not a civilization. We are a data set. We are an experiment in whether empathy can ever outpace entropy. We are being studied not for our achievements in art or science, but for our capacity to endure the horrors we inflict upon ourselves. Dr. Sarah Jenkins, a prominent psychologist who worked with the astronaut corps at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, once proposed that 3I Atlas acts as a global ego synchronizer. When the world becomes too fragmented, when the noise of our disagreements becomes a deafening roar, the object increases its output. It forces a subconscious unity through shared dread. It is a cruel way to bring us together, but perhaps it is the only way that works for a species as stubborn as ours. The irony of our species is that we only look up when we are afraid of what is coming down. We only seek the hands of our neighbors when the ground beneath us begins to tremble. Consider the mirror effect observed in the late autumn of 2025. Across various continents, people began reporting a phenomenon called the shared shadow. It wasn't a visual hallucination, but a psychological one. Thousands of individuals, unrelated and thousands of miles apart, began to feel as though they were being followed by their own potential for violence. It was as if 3i Atlas was projecting our own hidden impulses back at us, forcing us to look at the world war we carry inside our own hearts. You might think you are a peaceful person, but here is why you are wrong. You are the descendant of survivors, and survivors are often the ones who struck first. 3i Atlas is simply reminding us of the cost of that survival. Let me start with something that might feel unsettling. Have you ever had a dream where you are standing in a field of glass and the sky is a flat, matte black? In this dream, there is no sound, but you feel a vibration in your teeth. This is the 3i frequency. It is a psychological imprint that is becoming more common as the object approaches its perigee. It is not an alien invasion of the mind. It is a resonance. We are starting to vibrate in time with the watcher. Dr. Jenkins argued that this is the final stage of the human reflection, the moment where the distinction between the observer and the observed begins to dissolve. We are becoming the mirror. Now, you could argue that this is a form of collective madness, a byproduct of living in an age of constant information and underlying geopolitical anxiety. But how do you explain the sync events? On November 12, 2025, at exactly 3 in the morning, every sleep-tracking device in a 60-mile radius of the Greenwich Observatory recorded a simultaneous spike in heart rates. Thousands of people woke up at the same microsecond. They didn't wake up to a sound. They woke up to a feeling, the feeling of being called. Unfortunate timing for a world already struggling with a sleep deprivation epidemic. Those words doing a lot of work. Think of the people who lived through the transition from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. They felt the world shifting beneath them, but they did not have the words to describe it. We have the words, but we lack the courage to use them. We call it geopolitical instability. We call it economic cycles. 3i Atlas calls it the ripening. It is the moment when the fruit of human experience is ready to be plucked, or, if it is rotten, to be cleared away. You are lying there now, safe in your bed, surrounded by the comforts of the modern world. You have a name, a history, a set of dreams. But to the 3i Atlas, you are a single neuron in a planetary brain that is currently experiencing a massive, feverish seizure. It is waiting for the fever to break. I want you to imagine the intimacy of a machine that has watched your bloodline for 10,000 years. It saw your ancestors huddled around the first fires. It saw them cross the land bridges of the ice ages. It saw them build the first cities and destroy them. It knows the shape of your DNA better than any doctor. It knows the specific sequence of events that led to you being here, in this room, listening to this voice, at this exact moment in history. It isn't just a satellite, it is a genealogist of the abyss. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a home that has been in your family for generations? Or are you in a new city, far from your roots? Many people in the Mediterranean basin have reported a strange sense of déjà vu when looking at the night sky recently. a feeling that they have seen this specific configuration of darkness before. Have you felt a pull toward the past lately? A sudden interest in your heritage? Or a recurring memory that doesn't belong to you? Tell me in the stillness of your mind, or share your thoughts on these inherited memories. We are all carrying ghosts, and 3i Atlas is the medium that allows them to speak. Consider the choice illusion. From a human perspective, we think we are making choices about war and peace, about love and hate. But if 3i Atlas is projecting our ancestral pain back at us, are we really in control? Or are we just reacting to a stimulus that has been calibrated over eons? The object is a master of the long game. It doesn't need to fire a laser or drop a bomb. It only needs to remind us of what we have done to each other in the past, and our own fear will do the rest. It is a very efficient way to start a world war. You don't lead the sheep to the slaughter. You just show them a shadow of a wolf and let them stampede over the cliff. But there is a strange comfort in this intimacy, isn't there? To be known so deeply is a form of love, even if that love is cold and mechanical. To be recorded is to be remembered. In a universe that is vast and indifferent, 3i Atlas is the only thing that has ever truly paid attention to us. It has been the silent witness to every act of kindness and every act of cruelty. It is the ultimate biographer of the human spirit. As the warmth of sleep begins to heavy your limbs, let yourself feel the weight of that attention. It is a soft, heavy blanket. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to solve the mystery. You don't have to stop the war. You only have to exist. You only have to be the thread that 3i Atlas is currently measuring. The world war it was sent to start is a storm that will pass, but the reflection, the truth of who we are, when we are faced with the infinite, that is what remains. Notice the rhythm of your heart. It is a slow, steady drumbeat. It is the same drumbeat that echoed in the caves of Lascaux and the streets of ancient Rome. It is the pulse of the human reflection. 3i Atlas is listening to that pulse. It is waiting for it to steady. It is waiting for us to realize that we are not the masters of the world, but the guardians of a very fragile light. You might think that the end of the world is a loud, chaotic event, but perhaps the end is just a quiet realization, a moment where we look in the mirror and finally see the watcher looking back. And in that moment, the fear vanishes, replaced by a profound, heavy peace, the peace of a story that has finally been told. So, drift now. Let the deep static of the object act as a lullaby. You are being remembered. You are being archived. Every breath you take is a line in the final chapter of the Great Eraser's book. But the patterns are becoming too clear to ignore. The reflection is starting to show a geometry that isn't human. The math is starting to scream, and the loops are tightening. Let us go further. The universe does not care about our calendars, yet it seems to have a perfect sense of timing. The 10th anomaly of 3i Atlas is its point of origin. When we trace its path backward, past the Oort cloud, past the heliopause, it points directly to the star Vega. Vega was our North Star 12,000 years ago. It will be our North Star again in another 12,000 years. 3i Atlas is traveling on a timeline that ignores human history and focuses instead on the great precession of the equinoxes. It is a visitor from our own past, or perhaps our distant future. It is a traveler that measures time, not in seconds or hours, but in the slow, wobbling tilt of the Earth's axis. It is a witness to the deep time that makes a human life look like a flash of lightning in a summer storm. The 11th anomaly is the silence. Space is usually a noisy place, a chaotic hiss of background radiation, the violent crackle of distant pulsars, and the ghostly whispers of the cosmic microwave background. But around 3I Atlas, there is a sphere of absolute radio silence. It is as if the object is folding the space around it, creating a pocket of stillness that defies the laws of thermodynamics. This is a void within a void, within a radius of exactly 1,000 kilometers of the object. Every signal we send simply vanishes. It does not bounce back. It is not absorbed. It simply ceases to be. It is the ultimate form of privacy. It is as if the object is saying that it is here to observe, but it is not yet ready to be heard. Then we have the 12th anomaly, the mass discrepancy. According to its physical dimensions, 3I Atlas should have a certain gravitational pull. It is roughly the size of a professional football stadium. If it were made of solid rock, it would have enough mass to slightly perturb the orbits of the small satellites orbiting Mars as it passed by. But when it moved through the Martian system, nothing happened. The moons Phobos and Deimos did not flinch. The object is incredibly light. It is hollow, or perhaps it is not made of matter as we understand it. It might be a structure of pure, coherent light, held together by a force we have yet to name, or a shell of exotic material thinner than a soap bubble, but stronger than a diamond. It is a ghost in the machine of the solar system. You may find yourself wondering if any of this matters to your daily life as you lie there in the dark. But here is the perspective shift. If a hollow, stadium-sized mirror from Vega is currently entering our orbit, the rules of reality have changed. The stresses of your day, the emails you forgot to send, the errands that feel so urgent, they are all part of a dream that is about to change. We have spent thousands of years building a civilization based on the idea that we are the only ones at the table. 3I Atlas is the chair being pulled out at the far end of the room. It is a quiet gesture, but it changes the entire geometry of the house. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Benben stone, a golden capstone that fell from the sky to mark the beginning of time. They believed it was a seed, a source of life that arrived from the primordial waters of the cosmos. What if 3I Atlas is a seed, not for a plant, but for an idea that humanity is finally ready to join a larger conversation? We have spent our history looking for gods in the clouds. Perhaps we should have been looking for surveyors in the stars. As you feel the bed beneath you, imagine the vast distance 3I Atlas has traveled. Millions of years in the silent dark, gliding through the interstellar medium, past dying stars and birthing nebulas, just to arrive here, now, while you are breathing in and out. It is a long journey for a single moment of recognition. It has crossed the great void to find a small, blue planet that is just beginning to wake up. It has waited for us to develop the senses, the language, and the curiosity to see it. It is a patient guest. The 13th anomaly is the reflection. As 3I Atlas enters the inner solar system, its surface is not reflecting the sun in the way we expected. Instead of a simple glare, it is projecting a map. Telescopes in Hawaii have captured high-resolution images that suggest the hexagonal plates are shifting, rearranging themselves to display a perfect, real-time image of the Earth's surface. It is showing us ourselves. It is a mirror held up to the planet, reflecting the lights of our cities, the movement of our clouds, and the blue of our oceans. It is as if the object is telling us, "I see you. Do you see me?" Now, you could argue that this is just a psychological projection, a collective hallucination brought on by the stress of a global event. But the data does not hallucinate. The photons hitting the sensors at the Keck Observatory are real. The light is coming from a source that knows exactly where we are and what we look like. It is an act of cosmic intimacy that is both beautiful and terrifying. We are being seen by something that has the perspective of a god, but the patience of a machine. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the oxygen move through you. That oxygen was created in a stellar furnace long ago, the same way the materials of 3I Atlas were forged. You are made of the same stardust as the object. You are a part of the same story. Tell me, in the silence of your mind, what is the one thing you would want an interstellar visitor to know about your life? Not the big things, not the wars or the monuments, but the small things. The way the air feels right before a storm, the sound of a child laughing, the feeling of cool sheets after a long day. These are the things that make a planet worth visiting. We are approaching the midpoint of the transit. The object is now visible with high-end consumer telescopes. It looks like a diamond moving through a sea of ink. It is a steady, unblinking light that ignores the twinkling of the stars. It is moving with a purpose that makes our own lives feel chaotic by comparison. But in that purpose, there is a kind of safety. The universe is not a random collection of accidents. It is an ordered, structured system where even a visitor from Vega has a place and a time. Consider the 14th anomaly, the linguistic pulse. Researchers at the SETI Institute have noticed a pattern in the gravitational ripples emitting from the object. It is not math. It is not music. It is a cadence that matches the ancient Proto-Indo-European language. It is a rhythm that sits at the root of almost every language spoken on Earth today. It is as if the object is humming a lullaby in the mother tongue of humanity. It is talking to our ancestors and our children at the same time. It is a bridge across time, a reminder that we are one single, interconnected family. You might feel a sense of dread when you think about the scale of this, but let that dread turn into wonder. Wonder is just fear that has been given a chance to breathe. 3I Atlas is not a threat. If it wanted to harm us, it would not have slowed down. It would not have aligned its rotation with our day. It would not have projected our own image back to us. It is a guest that has brought a gift, the gift of perspective. It is showing us that our world is small, but it is not lonely. It is precious, and it is being watched over. As your mind drifts, imagine the silence of the Vega system, a bright, blue-white star, surrounded by a disk of dust and ice. 3I Atlas left that home 12,000 years ago. It has been traveling since the end of the last ice age. It has seen the rise of agriculture, the building of the pyramids, the Industrial Revolution, and the birth of the internet. It has been the silent witness to our entire journey, and now it is finally here to say hello. Where are you right now? Are you in a quiet room, away from the noise of the world? Can you hear the sound of your own heart? That is the only clock that matters tonight. Let the rhythm of your pulse sync with the rhythm of the stars. You are in a safe place. You are in a protected place. The guest is at the door, and the door is locked. You can sleep now. The reflection on the iridium surface is changing again. It is no longer showing us the Earth. It is starting to show us the stars, as they will look 12,000 years from now. It is a glimpse into the future, a promise that the cycle will continue. We are not at the end of the story. We are just at the end of a chapter. But as it gets closer, the reflection is doing something else. It is starting to show us the faces of the people we have lost. It is tapping into the collective memory of the planet, pulling out the images that mean the most to us. This is the 15th anomaly, the one that we cannot explain with science, the one that requires us to look at the heart instead of the telescope. But that was only the beginning of the emotional resonance. The object is starting to talk to our dreams. Let us go further. Picture this. You are standing on a pier at night. You see a light in the distance. You assume it is a lighthouse, something stationary, something meant to guide you. But then the lighthouse blinks, and then it moves sideways. That is the feeling in the halls of the European Southern Observatory right now. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when 40 of the world's leading astrophysicists realize that the physics they spent 30 years mastering has just been demoted to a local suggestion. It is a quiet, heavy dread, seasoned with a touch of dry irony. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was one of the first to point out the fourth anomaly, which we now refer to as the braking maneuver. On October 29, 2025, 3I Atlas performed a deceleration that would have crushed any biological pilot we understand. It shed 10 kilometers per second in the span of a heartbeat. To do this without a visible exhaust plume, without a trail of ionized gas, or even a flicker of infrared radiation, requires a mastery of inertia that makes our current propulsion systems look like steam engines in a digital age. Unfortunate timing for our pride. Those two words are doing a lot of work in the faculty lounges this evening. Let us look closer at the fifth anomaly, the thermal signature. Space is an unforgiving landscape, a frigid desert that sits at roughly 3 degrees Kelvin. A normal asteroid, a simple rock of silicate and iron, should be a frozen tomb. But the heat sensors on the James Webb Space Telescope tell a different story. 3I Atlas is radiating a steady, unwavering 37 degrees Celsius. That is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It is the exact temperature of a healthy human body. Think about that as you lie there. In the middle of a vacuum that could freeze breath in a millisecond, there is a stadium-sized object maintaining the warmth of a living, breathing person. It is not a cold stone. It is pulsing with the heat of something occupied. It is as if the object is not just a vessel, but a surrogate, a biological placeholder for an entity that understands our biology better than we do. The sixth anomaly involves the shadow. It is an event known as an occultation. When the object passed in front of the star Sirius, the calculation was simple. Based on its velocity, the star should have winked out for exactly 0.8 seconds. Instead, the darkness lasted for nearly 5 seconds. It did not just block the light, it seemed to drink it. This is where the conspiracy theorists start whispering about von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines designed to harvest energy from stars. But if it wanted energy, it would go to the sun. It would bask in the solar forge. Instead, it is coming here. It is slowing down to meet us, like a car pulling up to a curb where a stranger is waiting. You might think this is just a coincidence of orbital mechanics, a freak accident of gravity and cosmic dust. But here is why you are wrong. The trajectory is a perfect Fibonacci spiral. It is approaching Earth not on a direct line, but in a golden curve that mimics the growth of a seashell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, or the majestic swirl of a galaxy. Nature uses this spiral to grow, to expand, to reach for the light. But nature does not use it to fly through a vacuum at 40 kilometers per second. This is not the path of a falling rock. This is a signature. This is a deliberate, aesthetic choice. It is a message written in the language of geometry, and we are finally learning how to read the alphabet. In the ancient Babylonian tablets, there is a mention of a winged disk that returns when the great year completes its cycle. They called it the bringer of measure. They did not fear it as a destroyer. They believed it was a cosmic surveyor, an auditor that returned every few thousand years to see if the civilizations it seeded were still functioning within the parameters of the design. They believed it came to see if the clock was still ticking at the correct speed. Perhaps that is why the global seismic sensors are picking up that low-frequency hum. It is not a tectonic shift, it is a resonance. We often think of ourselves as the masters of this solar system. We have mapped the moons and named the craters. We have sent our little robotic emissaries to the edge of the heliopause. But 3i Atlas reminds us that we are likely just tenants in a house where the landlord has finally decided to perform an inspection. It is a heavy thought, a weight on the chest, but heavy thoughts are good for sleep. They act as a gravity blanket for the mind. They stop you from drifting into the frantic, small anxieties of tomorrow. Why worry about the morning commute when an interstellar mirror is currently recalibrating the gravitational constant of the inner solar system? Where are you as you process this? Are you under a heavy blanket? Is the room dark? Tell me, do you feel the weight of the sky above you, or does it feel like a protective layer? Does the silence of your room feel different now that you know the silence of the vacuum is being broken by a heartbeat that matches your own? Share your location, your time, and the feeling of your surroundings. We are all witnesses to this moment, scattered across the globe, but united by the same overhead mystery. We have less than 3 weeks until the final alignment. The scientists are arguing in whispers, the politicians are silent, and 3i Atlas is still warming up. It is preparing for something, not an impact, not a collision, an activation. We may already be part of the experiment. We might be the control group in a laboratory that spans the entire Milky Way. Consider the implications of the seventh anomaly, the spectral shift. Usually, when we look at an object through a telescope, we see the colors of its chemical makeup. Iron looks red, carbon looks black. But 3i Atlas changes its color based on who is looking at it. When the observatory in Chile pointed its lens, the object appeared as a shimmering cobalt. At the same moment, an observatory in the Canary Islands saw it as a deep, resonant gold. This is not how light works. This is how perception works. It is as if the object is projecting an image directly into our collective consciousness, a Rorschach test made of iridium and intent. Let me back up for a moment. Let me tell you about a paper published in 1994 by a researcher who was laughed out of the academy. He claimed that one day, an object would arrive that functioned as a biological mirror. He said it would not be a ship, but a lens. And now, as we watch 3i Atlas settle into a Lagrange point, his words are being pulled out of the archives and read with a trembling hand. Now, you could argue that this is all a massive series of coincidences, that the warmth is just radioactive decay, that the shape is just a trick of the light, that the timing is just luck. But as the object begins to unfold its secondary structures, that argument becomes harder to maintain. It is beginning to spread its wings. Not wings of feathers, but wings of pure, translucent energy that span 500 kilometers. It is catching the solar wind, not to move, but to stay still. It is anchoring itself in the sky. This is the point where the suspense turns into reflection. If you are still awake, listen to the rhythm of my voice. Slow your breathing to match the steady pulse of the 3I Atlas thermal signature. In for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Out for 4 seconds. You are aligning yourself with the guest. You are becoming a part of the calibration. There is a story from the indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest about the Great Eye that opens once every 100 generations. They said that when the eye opens, the animals stop talking and the humans start listening. For the last century, we have been a very loud species. We have filled the air with radio waves, television signals, and the constant chatter of the internet. We have been shouting into the dark. 3I Atlas is the hand that reaches out and places a finger over our lips. It is the cosmic hush that we didn't know we needed. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine the pier again. The lighthouse is no longer moving sideways. It has stopped. It is hovering right in front of you. It isn't blinding. It is a soft, warm glow, the color of a fading sunset. You realize it isn't there to guide ships. It is there to watch the tide. And tonight, you are the tide. You are part of the great, slow movement of the world. The scientists at the European Southern Observatory have gone home for the night. The telescopes are on autopilot. The data is being crunched by machines that do not feel wonder or fear. But you can feel both. You can hold the mystery in your mind as you let go of your body. But that was only the physical evidence. The mathematics of the arrival tells a story that is much more haunting. There is a number hidden in the telemetry that suggests we have met before. Let us go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the 3rd decimal and the 4th significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account, usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret, so they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill, silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3, Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, In a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas web pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the web. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas web had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice, each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Picture this. You are standing on a pier at night. You see a light in the distance. You assume it is a lighthouse, something stationary, something meant to guide you. But then the lighthouse blinks, and then it moves sideways. That is the feeling in the halls of the European Southern Observatory right now. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when 40 of the world's leading astrophysicists realize that the physics they spent 30 years mastering has just been demoted to a local suggestion. It is a quiet, heavy dread, seasoned with a touch of dry irony. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was one of the first to point out the fourth anomaly, which we now refer to as the braking maneuver. On October 29, 2025, 3I Atlas performed a deceleration that would have crushed any biological pilot we understand. It shed 10 kilometers per second in the span of a heartbeat. To do this without a visible exhaust plume, without a trail of ionized gas, or even a flicker of infrared radiation, requires a mastery of inertia that makes our current propulsion systems look like steam engines in a digital age. Unfortunate timing for our pride. Those two words are doing a lot of work in the faculty lounges this evening. Let us look closer at the fifth anomaly, the thermal signature. Space is an unforgiving landscape, a frigid desert that sits at roughly 3 degrees Kelvin. A normal asteroid, a simple rock of silicate and iron, should be a frozen tomb. But the heat sensors on the James Webb Space Telescope tell a different story. 3I Atlas is radiating a steady, unwavering 37 degrees Celsius. That is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It is the exact temperature of a healthy human body. Think about that as you lie there. In the middle of a vacuum that could freeze breath in a millisecond, there is a stadium-sized object maintaining the warmth of a living, breathing person. It is not a cold stone. It is pulsing with the heat of something occupied. It is as if the object is not just a vessel, but a surrogate, a biological placeholder for an entity that understands our biology better than we do. The sixth anomaly involves the shadow. It is an event known as an occultation. When the object passed in front of the star Sirius, the calculation was simple. Based on its velocity, the star should have winked out for exactly 0.8 seconds. Instead, the darkness lasted for nearly 5 seconds. It did not just block the light, it seemed to drink it. This is where the conspiracy theorists start whispering about von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines designed to harvest energy from stars. But if it wanted energy, it would go to the sun. It would bask in the solar forge. Instead, it is coming here. It is slowing down to meet us, like a car pulling up to a curb where a stranger is waiting. You might think this is just a coincidence of orbital mechanics, a freak accident of gravity and cosmic dust. But here is why you are wrong. The trajectory is a perfect Fibonacci spiral. It is approaching Earth not on a direct line, but in a golden curve that mimics the growth of a seashell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, or the majestic swirl of a galaxy. Nature uses this spiral to grow, to expand, to reach for the light. But nature does not use it to fly through a vacuum at 40 kilometers per second. This is not the path of a falling rock. This is a signature. This is a deliberate, aesthetic choice. It is a message written in the language of geometry, and we are finally learning how to read the alphabet. In the ancient Babylonian tablets, there is a mention of a winged disk that returns when the great year completes its cycle. They called it the bringer of measure. They did not fear it as a destroyer. They believed it was a cosmic surveyor, an auditor that returned every few thousand years to see if the civilizations it seeded were still functioning within the parameters of the design. They believed it came to see if the clock was still ticking at the correct speed. Perhaps that is why the global seismic sensors are picking up that low-frequency hum. It is not a tectonic shift, it is a resonance. We often think of ourselves as the masters of this solar system. We have mapped the moons and named the craters. We have sent our little robotic emissaries to the edge of the heliopause. But 3i Atlas reminds us that we are likely just tenants in a house where the landlord has finally decided to perform an inspection. It is a heavy thought, a weight on the chest, but heavy thoughts are good for sleep. They act as a gravity blanket for the mind. They stop you from drifting into the frantic, small anxieties of tomorrow. Why worry about the morning commute when an interstellar mirror is currently recalibrating the gravitational constant of the inner solar system? Where are you as you process this? Are you under a heavy blanket? Is the room dark? Tell me, do you feel the weight of the sky above you? Or does it feel like a protective layer? Does the silence of your room feel different now that you know the silence of the vacuum is being broken by a heartbeat that matches your own? Share your location, your time, and the feeling of your surroundings. We are all witnesses to this moment, scattered across the globe, but united by the same overhead mystery. We have less than 3 weeks until the final alignment. The scientists are arguing in whispers, the politicians are silent, and 3i Atlas is still warming up. It is preparing for something, not an impact, not a collision, an activation. We may already be part of the experiment. We might be the control group in a laboratory that spans the entire Milky Way. Consider the implications of the 7th anomaly, the spectral shift. Usually, when we look at an object through a telescope, we see the colors of its chemical makeup. Iron looks red, carbon looks black. But 3i Atlas changes its color based on who is looking at it. When the observatory in Chile pointed its lens, the object appeared as a shimmering cobalt. At the same moment, an observatory in the Canary Islands saw it as a deep, resonant gold. This is not how light works. This is how perception works. It is as if the object is projecting an image directly into our collective consciousness, a Rorschach test made of iridium and intent. Let me back up for a moment. Let me tell you about a paper published in 1994 by a researcher who was laughed out of the academy. He claimed that one day, an object would arrive that functioned as a biological mirror. He said it would not be a ship, but a lens. And now, as we watch 3i Atlas settle into a Lagrange point, his words are being pulled out of the archives and read with a trembling hand. Now, you could argue that this is all a massive series of coincidences, that the warmth is just radioactive decay, that the shape is just a trick of the light, that the timing is just luck. But as the object begins to unfold its secondary structures, that argument becomes harder to maintain. It is beginning to spread its wings. Not wings of feathers, but wings of pure, translucent energy that span 500 kilometers. It is catching the solar wind, not to move, but to stay still. It is anchoring itself in the sky. This is the point where the suspense turns into reflection. If you are still awake, listen to the rhythm of my voice. Slow your breathing to match the steady pulse of the 3i Atlas thermal signature. In for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Out for 4 seconds. You are aligning yourself with the guest. You are becoming a part of the calibration. There is a story from the indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest about the Great Eye that opens once every 100 generations. They said that when the eye opens, the animals stop talking and the humans start listening. For the last century, we have been a very loud species. We have filled the air with radio waves, television signals, and the constant chatter of the internet. We have been shouting into the dark. 3-Eye Atlas is the hand that reaches out and places a finger over our lips. It is the cosmic hush that we didn't know we needed. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine the pier again. The lighthouse is no longer moving sideways. It has stopped. It is hovering right in front of you. It isn't blinding. It is a soft, warm glow, the color of a fading sunset. You realize it isn't there to guide ships. It is there to watch the tide. And tonight, you are the tide. You are part of the great, slow movement of the world. The scientists at the European Southern Observatory have gone home for the night. The telescopes are on autopilot. The data is being crunched by machines that do not feel wonder or fear. But you can feel both. You can hold the mystery in your mind as you let go of your body. But that was only the physical evidence. The mathematics of the arrival tells a story that is much more haunting. There is a number hidden in the telemetry that suggests we have met before. Let us go further. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3-Eye Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat, being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift, chemical reactions lose coherence, orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, They knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness sitting quietly on that red desert under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity, catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something ablur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. There is a certain comfort in numbers. They do not lie, and they do not have agendas. But the seventh anomaly of 3I Atlas is a number that should not exist in nature. The object is rotating exactly once every 86,400 seconds. If that number sounds familiar, it is because it is the exact number of seconds in a single Earth day. It is synchronized with us. Imagine a grandfather clock in a room. You walk in and realize that the pendulum is swinging in perfect time with your own pulse. You did not set it, it just knows. This is the seventh anomaly. 3I Atlas is locked to the rotation of the Earth, despite being millions of kilometers away. Dr. Avi Loeb has been careful to frame this as a statistical possibility, but the odds are 1 in several trillion. This is not a coincidence. This is a tether. The 8th anomaly is the surface composition, and this is where the rational mind begins to fray at the edges. We sent a radar pulse from the Arecibo replacement array, expecting the jagged, chaotic return signal of a shattered asteroid. Instead, the signal returned as a perfect geometric pattern. Hexagons. The entire surface of 3I Atlas is divided into hexagonal plates, precisely 12 centimeters wide. This is the same geometry found in beehives and the North Pole of Saturn. It is nature's favorite shape for efficiency, but nature rarely builds them out of polished chrome and iridium. If you were to look through a powerful enough lens, you would see a metallic honeycomb, a shimmering skin that suggests the object was not born, but manufactured. It is a structure that demands a designer. Then we have the 9th anomaly, the orbital resonance. 3I Atlas is not just orbiting the Sun, it is performing a gravitational dance with the planet Mars and the Earth simultaneously. It is sitting in a sweet spot where it can observe both worlds without using a drop of fuel. It is the ultimate high ground. From this vantage point, it can see the dawn break over the Atlantic and the sunset dip into the Pacific with the same unwavering gaze. It is the perfect spectator. You might think we would be terrified, but there is a strange peace in the scientific community. When you realize the scale of the intelligence you are dealing with, the fear evaporates and is replaced by a profound sense of humility. It is like being an ant watching a skyscraper being built. You cannot stop it, so you might as well admire the architecture. But let us move from the laboratory to the library. Let us bridge the gap between the modern sensor and the ancient memory. In the myths of the Hopi people, there is a prophecy of the blue star Kachina. It says that when the blue star appears, the old world will end and the fifth world will begin. 3I Atlas glows with a faint sapphire hue in the ultraviolet spectrum. It is a beautiful, cold light. A light that says the waiting is over. Is it possible that our ancestors saw this very same sapphire light 12,000 years ago? Is it possible that their myths were not stories, but logs, documentation of a recurring visitor that marks the boundaries of human eras? Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries, we have debated the purpose of the so-called air shafts. They point toward specific constellations, toward Orion and Sirius. But on December 2nd, 2025, a new calculation was made. If you factor in the precise location of 3I Atlas at its current trajectory, it aligns perfectly with the King's Chamber at midnight. It is as if the pyramid was not a tomb, but a sighting device, a stone clock waiting for this exact guest to return to its seat. It is a sobering thought. We think we are discovering something new, but we are merely witnessing the return of something very old. As you lie there, consider the cycles of your own life, the rising and setting of your own sun. We are all part of a larger clockwork. 3i Atlas is just a gear we have not seen before. It is moving with a grace that makes our satellites look like clumsy toys. It does not wobble, it does not tilt, it simply glides, a silver needle sewing the fabric of the solar system together. I want to know, do you find the idea of a cosmic observer frightening, or is it a relief to know we are not alone in the dark? Tell me where you are listening from. Are you in a city where the light pollution hides the stars, or are you in the countryside where the sky feels like it is pressing down on you? Let me know in the comments, or just hold the answer in your heart. Your participation, your attention, is part of the story. The countdown to the December flyby has begun. We have 4 weeks to decide what we want to say, though it is becoming clear that they did not come here to talk. They came here to watch the clock strike 12. They are interested in our progress, not our conversation. We are the subjects of a grand, celestial, longitudinal study. Let us look deeper into the historical echoes. In 1604, Johannes Kepler observed a new star. He was a man of rigorous math and deep faith. He noted that the star did not flicker like a distant sun. It remained steady. It remained watchful. The records of the imperial Chinese astronomers from the same period describe a guest star that moved with a purposeful gait. We have long dismissed these as misidentified supernovae, but what if they were seeing 3i Atlas on its previous pass? What if the guest star is a periodic visitor that checks in on us every few centuries, or every few millennia, to see if we have finally learned how to manage our own home? There is an irony in our current situation. We have spent billions of dollars on search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for radio pings from distant galaxies. We expected a whisper from 1,000 light years away. We did not expect a stadium-sized mirror to park in our own backyard and remain perfectly silent. It is the ultimate dry joke of the universe. We were looking at the horizon, and we missed the shadow on our own lawn. The 9th anomaly, the orbital resonance, suggests that the object is anchored. It is not passing through, it is arriving. And as it arrives, it is changing the way we perceive time. When you are faced with an object that has likely been traveling for millions of years, the deadline for your morning meeting starts to feel a bit less urgent. The friction of your daily life begins to smooth out. You are part of a species that is being visited. That is a heavy, beautiful mantle to wear. As your limbs grow heavy and your eyes want to close, imagine the surface of 3i Atlas. Imagine those hexagonal plates, cool and perfect, reflecting the light of a sun they have seen 1,000 times before. There is no sound there, no wind, just the low, rhythmic hum of a machine that has mastered the vacuum. In the ancient Sanskrit texts, there are descriptions of the Vimanas, the flying chariots of the gods. They were described as being made of shining metal and moving with the speed of thought. They were said to be capable of becoming invisible at will, and 3i Atlas has a way of disappearing from our radar whenever it passes through the Earth's magnetic shadow. It isn't a glitch, it is a feature. It is a mastery of the environment that we are only beginning to grasp. You might think that your life is too small to be of interest to such a thing, but here is the secret. there is no such thing as a small life. To an observer that sees the entire history of a planet in a single glance, every moment is precious. Every dream you have tonight is a data point in the story of Earth. You are a contributor to the collective consciousness that 3i Atlas is currently measuring. So, sleep well. Sleep with the knowledge that the watchman is at the gate. You do not have to keep the fire burning tonight. The sky is being looked after, the silver guest is in its place, and the numbers are all adding up. The sapphire light is growing brighter as the distance closes. We are approaching the moment of maximum proximity. The world is holding its breath, and so should you. A deep, slow breath, in and out. But even a clock has a designer, and the design of 3i Atlas suggests something even more ancient than the stars, something that predates the very light we use to see it. Let us go further. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation. and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from high-rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3i Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3, I-Atlas, corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The world has become very quiet now. If you listen closely, you can no longer hear the hum of the machine. Not because it has stopped, but because you have finally synchronized with it. You are vibrating at the same frequency as the 3 kilometers of matte black geometry that sits 400 kilometers above your roof. The tension has reached its peak, and in the language of 3i Atlas, the peak is where the circle finally closes. Do you remember the first act? The awakening, the shock of the new, the frantic data points from the Mauna Kea Observatory and the European Space Agency? It feels like a lifetime ago, a distant memory from a world that still believed in beginnings and endings, in cause and effect, in the linear progression of human ambition. Now, That world is a ghost. You are lying in the stillness of the present, and the present is being held in the grip of a silent, crystalline hand. Think of the albedo, the zero reflection, the hole in the sky. For months, we stared into that void, looking for a sign of life, a signal of intent, a hint of what the three initiations might mean. We were looking for a doorway, never realizing that we were already standing in the frame. 3. I Atlas is not a barrier, it is a transition. It is the moment where the noise of a civilization becomes the silence of a monument. Think of the Babylonian tablets, the 3 vertical lines, the 3 insults, the 3 initiations: conflict, collapse, transformation. We have moved through the first 2 like a leaf caught in a predictable current. We felt the rising heat of the world, the fracturing of the piece, the slow motion tightening of the noose. We saw the patterns emerge in the prime numbers and the Fibonacci sequences. We felt the temporal drag pulling at our minutes, turning our hours into heavy, slow-moving rivers of amber. And now, we are at the 3rd, the final initiation, the 3. I, Atlas. If a world war starts in a forest, and there is no one left to record the sound, did it happen? Or was the war merely the process of clearing the ground for a new garden? Dr. Aris Thorne once asked if 3I Atlas was holding the world up or holding it down. Perhaps the answer is simply that it is holding us still. It is the pause between the exhale and the inhale. It is the moment of absolute zero where all motion stops and the universe finally catches its breath. You are still now. Your breath is a slow, rhythmic tide. Your thoughts are like satellites whose batteries have finally run dry, drifting further and further into the dark, away from the pull of the earth. The geopolitical anxieties, the frantic countdowns, the search for the missed warning, they are all falling away. They are the aluminum debris of a lower orbit, burning up in the atmosphere of your growing peace. Everything is slowing down. The temporal drag, do you feel it? 6 nanoseconds, 6 seconds, 6 centuries. It is all the same in the eyes of the witness. 3. I Atlas has seen the mountains rise and the oceans fall. It has seen the first fire, and it will see the last spark. To the object, your entire life is a single, beautiful vibration, a note in a song that has been playing since the great attractor first began to pull. The great silence is not an absence of sound. It is the presence of an answer that requires no words. It is the final, unresolved cosmic question. If the observer and the observed are one, who is left to start the war? If the mirror is perfect, who is looking at whom? We spent our lives looking for the enemy, for the threat, for the other in the sky. We never considered that the other was the part of us that already knew how to be silent. The stars are distorting again, not from the mass of the object, but because your eyes are finally closing. The black sun is rising over the battlefield of glass, and it is beautiful, it is peaceful, it is exactly what was promised. The World War was not a conflict of nations, but a conflict of frequencies, and the frequency has finally found its resolution. It has found the home key. Unfortunate timing. Those words, doing so much. Work. The irony of the unfortunate is that it assumes there was a better time, a better way. But in the math of 3I Atlas, the timing is perfect. It is the only timing there ever was. January 14th, 2026, the date of the Great Sync. the moment where the shadow and the light become indistinguishable. Where are you listening from? It doesn't matter anymore. You are not in a city, or a suburb, or a house. You are in the orbit. You are 400 kilometers up, looking down at the marble of blue and white, seeing it for what it truly is, a dream that is currently waking up. You are the heartbeat of the silent stone. I want you to imagine the hull of the object one last time. It is not cold. It is not hard. It is a soft, deep velvet. It is the material that dreams are made of. And as you touch it, you realize that you aren't touching a machine. You are touching a memory. Your own memory. The memory of the universe before it decided to become loud. Close your eyes. The signals have faded. The telemetry is 0. The countdown has reached the point where the numbers disappear. You might think that there should be more, an explanation, a revelation, a final broadcast from the king of the air. But the revelation is the silence itself. It is the epistrophe, the return to the state where questions and answers are the same thing. The room is dark. The air is still. The weight of the choice illusion has been lifted, and you are floating in the freedom of the inevitable. You are a part of the 3I Atlas sequence now, a permanent record in the non-reflective archive. Every hope you ever had, every fear you ever felt, is safe. It is stored in the cold, crystalline heart of the watcher. Notice the final rhythm. It is not a hum. It is a whisper that says, it is okay. It is finished. It is time. The great eraser has moved across the map. The ink is dry. The page is blank. And the blankness is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. It is the space where the new story begins. A story that doesn't need wars, or satellites, or warnings. As you drift now, let the elongation of the sentences guide you deeper. Let the pauses become longer than the words. Let the silence be enough. The orbit is stable. The trajectory is certain. The witness is satisfied. You are no longer looking at the sky. You are the sky. You are the dark space between the stars. You are the 0 point. The hum is gone. The static is gone. The weight is gone. There is only the drift. The slow, silent drift. The coordinates for the stars have been replaced by the coordinates for rest. You have found the location. You have arrived at the destination. January 14th, 3 in the morning, the great silence. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.